Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel, Booked with Juby. Today I'm sharing my top 5 nonfiction autobiographies and memoirs that I've listened to on audiobooks. And yes, listening to them makes a huge difference. There's something about hearing someone tell their own story in their own voice that just hits differently. Some of them were funny, some emotional, some absolutely devastating, but all of them felt really real. There's something about listening to it from the author's own narration that just allows them to add their own affliction with their voices, the tone, the sarcasm. It's supposed to be funny how they're taking it. And honestly, I really enjoy listening to autobiographies and memoirs because I just feel more connected to the story, and I feel like you can really get the author's point of view better because sometimes you read it through your own point of view instead of theirs. So if you're looking for powerful, deeply personal stories, stick around and we're Okay, kicking things off, the first autobiography we're going to talk about is Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey. All right, all right, all right. Now, this one is an experience. He doesn't just read it, he performs it. I mean, classic Matthew McConaughey. It's sort of a mix of personal stories, journal entries, life lessons, and honestly, some random philosophies that somehow make sense just with the way he says it, the way that he performs it, the way that he brings it to light. He shares stories of his Texas childhood, his complicated relationship with his parents, how he found acting, pivotal moments in his life. It's kind of like a rom-com, but it also takes on some very serious aspects and topics. One of the most entertaining parts, his wild stories. One time he got arrested in the nude playing the bongo drums. Or, even some of the stories he told, like he took some solo trips to the desert. Honestly, the whole thing was super enlightening. And if you like Matthew McConaughey, you're gonna like this one. I really enjoyed the way he told his life story in his own words and really just made it Matthew McConaughey. All right, all right, all right. Okay, the next one we're going to get into is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. Yes, the title is shocking, but it makes sense when you actually listen to the audiobook. And out of any of these audiobooks, this one you need to listen to. Like, you could read some of these other ones, but this one, if you don't listen to it, you won't get where she's like joking or, I mean, it's honestly a very devastating story, but she does a good job of bringing humor to it and lightening up a situation that was very traumatic, very disturbing, and honestly a little frightening. And the fact that she is the person she is today just shows the type of character and strength that she has. Jennette dives deep into her childhood and her acting career, which was kind of forced upon her by her mom. It talks everything that her mom controlled, including her food, her appearance, and even her thoughts. And the type of emotional manipulation that this mother was putting on this poor child, this one's a tough one to listen to, just in the sense that it's so shocking that you're like, what? No, like what? She talks about struggling with her eating disorders, anxiety, and shame, and it goes all the way from when she was a very little child up until most recently. She is really well known for being on the show iCarly as Sam, the best friend, and you just kind of see the kind of a darker side of the child actors in Hollywood and Nickelodeon in particular. And honestly, really recommend listening to this one because it will provide a different perspective. I was a little hesitant about actually listening to this one at first because I thought it was going to be overhyped because, when she first came out, everyone's just like, I'm glad my mom died. Come on, like that's crazy. But no, like really, it's it is a devastating story, but you are so proud of her by the end and everything that she's overcome and all the self-work that she's done to become the awesome person she is. I highly, highly recommend listening to this one. Next is Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. Whew, I expected this one to be emotional, but I wasn't quite ready for how raw and heartbreaking it would be, truly. This book is, oh my gosh, I am a big Friends fan. So if you're a big Friends fan, it's definitely a good listen because you get a perspective of him that you didn't necessarily know or you suspected. But honestly, he's brutally honest about his addiction, starting with the alcohol at a young age and the later prescription pills. He talks about nearly dying multiple times, which, I was born in the 90s and I actually didn't know all this because Friends was coming out during the 90s, but I was obviously very little, so I didn't get into it until I was a little bit older. And so not really knowing or understanding how far his addiction was, because it was headlines. It was huge headlines, but I didn't even necessarily know that because I was too young to understand those types of things. What makes this audiobook especially powerful is that he reads it himself and you can just hear the regret, the exhaustion, and sometimes even the anger in his voice. But also his humor never disappoints. It's a classic, could you be any more Chandler Bing type of, you know, comedy he adds to it. And he does a really good job explaining his whole life. And I didn't even know he was Canadian. He beat up our prime minister, our old prime minister, Justin Trudeau, which was hilarious and just a fun little quip. Honestly, just funny little weird things like that. And I didn't even realize he technically was a Nepo baby too, just because his parents were somewhat famous and his stepfather was famous. And honestly, this one was a hard one to listen to. I did cry a little bit, but I think if you are a Friends fan and a Matthew Perry fan, this one, you definitely want to give it a chance and give it a try because it really, really will touch you here. The next audiobook we're going to talk about is From Here to the Unknown by Lisa Marie Presley and Riley Keough. This one completely caught me off guard. I am a huge Elvis Presley fan, and I didn't expect to be so moved. This one was quite heavy. The whole book, to be honest with you, was heavy. So go into this one knowing it's going to be heavy, and it deals with a lot of trauma. I mean, starting from a very young age of having parents, Priscilla and Elvis, very famous people, Elvis extremely famous, and dealing with his own demons and having to witness that and be around that and watch her father, suffer, but also be admire him and be in love with him and care for him. And basically it shares the story of how Lisa Marie grew up as Elvis Presley's daughter and the type of pressure and expectations. And honestly, it wasn't all glamour and music. This whole audiobook is about loss, losing your father at a young age, navigating fame that she didn't ask for, and becoming her own icon, but also living in the shadow of an icon. She talks about her own music, how often she felt overlooked or misunderstood in the industry. She opens up about her marriages, particularly to Michael Jackson, which was really interesting. And I won't share too many details because I think it's better for you to listen to it. Now, this book is not actually narrated by Lisa Marie Presley because unfortunately she passed away before this book finished, but it is narrated by her daughter Riley Keough and Julia Roberts. And Riley does her own point of view with the same chapters that her mom wrote, and they kind of wrote it together, and that also added a very different in-depth conversation and made it a completely different point of view. I also was a little hesitant about this at first. I'm like, okay, really? You wrote your mom's book. Okay, kind of weird. But no, she provided a lot of insight and a lot of clarity to what her mom had written, and also her own experience and her own emotions with dealing with her mom and being in the spotlight too, and how much she cared and admired her. Honestly, this book is a very vulnerable book, and I could not stop listening to this one. I was so interested. The Elvis parts, the Michael Jackson parts, even Nicolas Cage when she marries him. It also deals with the loss of her son, which was obviously so traumatic and heartbreaking for her. And it also shows her struggles with alcohol and pills like her father, and kind of foreshadowing this. And truly an amazing, amazing, amazing story, and highly recommend listening to this one. And finally, my top pick and Frankie's is The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. To be honest with you, I only put this one on because I just needed something to listen to, and it was available on my Libby app. And let me tell you that I was so delighted with how cool this story was. I always liked Emily Gilmore. What an amazing character. She's iconic. She's amazing. She was one of my favorite Gilmores out of all three, to be honest with you. Like, she is the Emily Gilmore. And I didn't realize that the actress had such an interesting life, and she had a dance background, and she had a Broadway background. She was a very famous actress, the biggest one being A Chorus Line, where she won a Tony. She's incredibly honest about what it was like being a woman in the entertainment industry in the 60s and 70s and beyond, and how she navigated that, how she worked her butt off to get to where she is. And she talks about her first marriage and how she got into that particular relationship, and the downfalls of that, because her husband was a gambler, he was an alcoholic. She also came from a family with a dad that was a severe alcoholic and truly like not a kind person. And she talks about her mom and how brave her mom is, and almost like the Gilmore Girls, like that close relationship. I mean, I know Emily and Lorelai didn't necessarily have that relationship, but Lorelai and Rory sort of more like that. It shed a light on the actress, and I just think, honestly, her narration also just made it so elegant and interesting, and you could really feel her personality throughout the entire audiobook. I really felt like I was listening to like a friend talk almost. And also I just happened to be rewatching Gilmore Girls at the moment, and she talks about this in the audiobook, how Gilmore Girls, at first it was already like did very well, obviously, but it became even more famous once it was available for streaming and at home video, because you could just binge watch it. And that's actually the first time I ever did it, was when I was in university. I just put it on one day and fell in love, and this is like my third rewatch now, because who doesn't love Stars Hollows? Who doesn't love the characters? Now, what I did like about this book too is it wasn't all Gilmore Girls, right? So she talks about a lot more other things, like all the other work she did before, during, and after. She also talks about her relationship with her late husband and how much she loved him and their beautiful love story. And honestly, I just really enjoyed this one. I was so pleasantly surprised about how delightful and elegant and kind she is. I highly recommend listening to this one. It was so interesting, and I learned a lot about dance and Broadway in the 60s and 70s that I didn't know before. And that's all we have time for today, guys. So that's 5 of my favorite nonfiction audiobooks that are autobiographies or memoirs. What do you guys recommend? Have you listened to these ones? Do you have any other suggestions? Because I love listening to memoirs on audiobooks from the author's perspective. It just makes the narration it takes to a whole new level. So let me know in the comments, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can follow me here on YouTube, Booked with Juby, or Instagram, Booked with Juby. Love you all. Bye.